Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the NCSA webinar series, this is the first one. What is cute speech? We will ask everyone to keep their cameras off and on mute as well. We will ask everybody to put their questions in the chat, and then I will take a look at them, and Serena will answer them at the end of her presentation. If anybody, we will probably also ask you at some point in time to turn on your camera. Serena would like to see everybody and make connections and maybe take a screenshot for NCSA purposes. If you don't want your screenshot to be in, please keep your camera muted, off. We will also make sure that we will be done around 8:50, 8:55, and I will give Serena notice a few minutes ahead of time. With that in mind, we can go ahead. Serena would like to introduce herself.
David. Thank you, sorry. I had to make sure that you...
I'm gonna spotlight myself, and you can go ahead and start.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I wanted to give this webinar because I thought sometimes we need to go back to the beginning to understand what cute speech is, why it was developed, to figure out, what was the impetus behind this. And so let me start by telling you a little bit about myself. I'm a parent. My most important job is that I'm a parent of a native cure. I am a past president of the NCSA. I'm the current executive director. I was a transliterator for 11 years, and I'm pretty widely published on deaf education and cute speech. So that's just a little bit about me. And as I said, I think my most important job, because I think that it gives me the most passion for cueing, is that because I have personal experience as the mother of a profoundly deaf son. So let's go back a minute and think about the time that cute speech was developed. It was 1966. So back then, Dr. Cornett, who is a physicist, had no experience with deafness. He'd never met a deaf person. He didn't know anything about deafness, anything about deaf education. And what happened was he was working in the Department of Education, and he was working and he was reviewing the funding for Gallaudet College. It was a college at the time. And in so doing, he saw a statistic that bothered him. He saw the statistic that the average deaf child at age 18 would finish high school with a 3rd to 4th grade reading level. And he was very disturbed by this. And he was so disturbed that he wanted to understand why that happened. We also have to understand that at that time, there was a lot of turmoil between and friction between those who believed in what was then called oral education and those who believed in a sign language education. And so there was a lot of friction going on within deafness, within the deaf community. There was a lot of anger among the adult deaf population, children who had come out of schools for the deaf, where oral education had been forced on them, lip reading had been forced on them, and the technology then is not what it is today. There were no cochlear implants. Hearing aids were not as technology superior as they are today. So it was a very, very different time period. And Dr. Cornett came to this, that's what he was facing. And he thought, when he looked at it, he realized that those children who were coming out of oral education were not getting a clear message on the lips because there wasn't enough information. And he realized that those children who were being signed to, they might be signed to at school, but their parents at home were not signing at the level of fluency. So that therefore their language was limited because they didn't have good communication in the home. So to him, there was the idea that parents needed something easy to learn. They weren't going to learn a whole new language. And two, he felt that the message had to be clear. Three, he understood that because children weren't getting a clear message, they weren't internalizing spoken language. When you learn to read, you learn to read after you've already learned the language. So that's what we're going to go through, those points, but I wanted you to have kind of an understanding of the time period and what was going on during that time period as Dr. Cornett was approaching this issue of deafness and deaf education. So he was surprised at the poor reading levels, and he realized that even after 5 years of English at Gallaudet, they still were at the same reading level. And he thought, if these kids can't read, how are they getting information? They can't listen to the radio. They weren't reading books. They didn't have a level of literacy high enough to read a newspaper. And he thought, how are they getting information? He thought, as a hearing person who just didn't know any better, that deaf people would be voracious readers. And it wasn't until this hit him that he realized that literacy was a big issue and that they didn't have a way of getting information. So this was the problem that he looked at as a physicist, as someone with no experience in deafness. And maybe that was a good thing because he was looking at it with a different perspective. So Dr. Cornett became vice president of long-range planning at Gallaudet in the fall of 1965. And as part of his contract, he had to devote 1/3 of his time to research to improve literacy. And he wanted to develop a way to visually convey language used for reading and writing using one hand and the mouth. And that's the system we know of today as cued speech. So these were his thoughts. If all the phonemes of speech look clearly different from each other on the mouth, just as they sound different to the normal ear, then a profoundly deaf child could learn language through vision alone almost as easily as the normal child learns it from hearing. Now, that's a mouthful. What does that mean? So what he wanted was that English should be learned as a spoken language used in daily communication with the deaf child, assuming the parents were hearing. Now you have to understand, deaf of deaf is a small percentage of the population. Over 95% of deaf children are born to hearing parents. The information that was visible on the mouth had to be a component of the message. And the supporting elements of speech had to be produced at the same rate we talk. And they should contain phonemic and syllabic information. So he wanted to assist in speech and speech reading. He wanted a system that the parents could learn in a minimal amount of time in the language of the home. And he wanted it to be feasible for very young, prelingually deaf children and have it implemented solely by their parents. He was thinking about that family in rural Kentucky or rural Tennessee who was by themselves, the only child in the school district. This was a way that those parents could help those children. And he wanted to lift the level of accuracy in the spoken message. This is a photo of Dr. Cornett with Mary Elsie Daisy, and she was very bravely the first parent to use cueing with her child, Leah Henniger. So by 1966, Cornett had developed the system that we know of today as cued speech. It was a phonemically based mode of communication used to make traditionally spoken language visible. A closed system of hand shapes, placements, and mouth movements. Now, when I say a closed system, it means once you learn it, there's nothing else to learn. It's like learning your times tables. Once you learn it, that's it. You're finished. You can say anything. You can do accents. You can do idiomatic expressions. You're not learning anything else because you should be able to say everything with those 44 phonemes. So what cued speech did was it disambiguated lip reading, and I'm going to provide some demonstrations so that you could see what I'm talking about. It validated auditory skills. So you have a deaf child, he hears something with his hearing aids or with his cochlear implant. Does the doorbell go ding-a-ling or ding-dong, right? So that auditory message is validated for the child, okay? It reinforces speech skills. And when I say that, when you cue, since you're cueing every single phoneme in the word, the deaf child has an internal understanding of that. And as they're going to their SLP, they know what that sound is because it's been cued to. They understand that there's a sound there. And what cueing does is it made language clear, completely clear through vision alone. So this is the system. These are the hand shapes. Cueing is made up of 8 hand shapes and 4 positions around the mouth, okay? So these are the hand shapes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, there are 4 placements around the face. And these represent the vowel sounds. So you have the mouth, the chin, the throat, and the side position. So now, let me demonstrate something for you. Let's say I have the sound. I hope you're hearing my bird in the background. I can't quite shut her up. Let's say the hand shape here at the mouth position. This is the hand shape 5. It represents the sounds for M, F, and T, and T. This position represents the vowel sounds E and So now watch what happens. I can do me, fee, T, mer, fer, ter. Now, if you notice, nothing changed about my hand, but my mouth changed every single time because what looks alike on the hand will look different on the lips. Now watch when I do this. Me, be, fee. Now my hand shape changed, but my mouth stayed the same. So you see, my mouth, you couldn't tell the difference. But if you look at my hand, me, be, P. My mouth is the same, but my hand is different, okay? So what looks alike on the hand looks different on the lips. What looks alike on the lips looks different on the hands. Let's talk for a minute about how language develops in hearing children, okay? And literacy, because I think If you understand that, you understand the importance of cueing. Let's say you have a hearing child. The first thing you see is the child babbles. As the child gets a little older, he puts one or two words together. Eventually, there are sentences that are put together. The child learns to ask questions. You have discourse, that give and take with language, where the child is talking to you and you're answering back and you're having a real conversation, okay? And as that happens, as those language years develop, that language develops, what happens is the child internalizes the spoken language. They understand the syntax of language. They understand subject-verb agreement. They understand how to make a sentence, how to make exclamations, how to give commands. And this comes naturally to them because they're naturally hearing it. With a deaf child, that natural hearing doesn't happen. With the hearing child, when they've understood that internal understanding of the spoken language, when they're going to learn to read, it's just another form of the same language. So they've now have this foundation for literacy through the vocabulary that they have and that they've learned at home. And the richness of the language that that child has comes from being spoken to, comes from that discourse, okay? So now we understand how hearing children learn to read. Deaf children, it's a different path. If they don't have that internal understanding of the spoken language, then when they go to read, they're seeing the written word for the first time. And that's not a good thing, okay? That's why deaf children who are deaf, were having a difficult time with literacy. And this is how cued speech changed their lives. So when hearing parents began to use cued speech, because they could say anything they wanted, and because, like me, they felt a freedom with language, they provided visual access to the language of the home. Give you an example. Before I started cueing, I was concerned about how I could communicate with my child, and we were desperate for different things to do. So in the morning, when he woke up and he was having breakfast, I would point to the cereal boxes in the closet, and I would say, which one? I didn't say, do you want Rice Krispies, Fruit Loops, or Cheerios? I simplified what I said. And because I simplified what I said, because I needed to make sure he understood me, I was reducing his language level. But when I learned to cue, and when I understood he understood about cueing, I understood that I could say more, and that each thing that I said would increase his vocabulary. So when I cued, do you want Fruit Loops, Cheerios, or Corn Flakes? Now he had the names to go with those cereals, and I provided him with access to the spoken language, the language of my home. And as I felt freedom to speak to him, to talk to him, to communicate with him, language grew, okay? Parents can learn to cue, anybody can learn to cue in 12 to 15 hours, the entire system. Will you be fast? No, you're not gonna be fast, but you'll know the system. And as slowly as you cue, as slowly as your child cue, and it builds. Fluency builds with use. So you start with carrier phrases. Let's go to the, it's time for, and you fill in the blank. But you build that language with time, okay? And you build your fluency with time. The first step to literacy is internalizing the language, learning the language, be bathed in the language, experience the language, practice and use the language in conversation. Children must have repetition, consistency, frequency, and intensity. Children do not learn language effectively through print alone. They do not. They don't understand the nuances of language. They don't understand the idiomatic expressions that go with language or the regional dialects that go with language. Few kids do. Children of deaf parents also can cue. They use cued speech to learn English as their second language. And they understand that they can manipulate the phonemic stream of English to develop phonemic awareness of the language that they need to learn to read and write. Cue kids, they learn multiple languages, they learn accents, they learn dialects, they learn pronunciation, and cueing has been adapted to over 67 languages and major dialects. What happened was that because Dr. Cornett was very friendly with Dr. Merrill, who was then president of Gallaudet, they had lots of visitors from all over the world. And he would use those visitors to understand different languages, and he would modify the English system into different languages, hence 67 languages and major dialects. So in our English vocabulary, we have specificity, we have pronouns, we have synonyms, we have words with multiple meanings, we have contractions, we have idioms, and you can say all of those with cueing. You don't have to say do not, but say don't. You don't have to say it is. We don't say that. We say it's, or it is. So you're able to put words together the same way that you talk. Do you live on 33rd Street or 33rd Street? Okay. Show your accent. Okay. Do you park the car or park the car? Like if you're from Boston. Okay. There's a lot of things that we can do and say with cueing that we couldn't do before. So, question, does cued speech require hearing? No. If it did, transliterators wouldn't be effective, okay? In fact, when Dr. Cornett developed the system, he developed it for the most profoundly deaf children. He didn't develop it for the hard of hearing. A lot of side benefits came with use, but he developed it because he wanted deaf children in remote areas to be able to have access to the spoken language. We understand that cued speech validate what is heard through assistive listening devices. And it provides a visual model of a target during auditory training. So what happens is that, let's say the SLP is teaching the S sound, okay? Or the difference between S and Z, okay? Is it cats has an S on the end, but dogs has a Z on the end. They're both spelled with an S on the end, but one has a Z sound and one has the S sound on the end. With cueing, the SLP can show that for the teacher of the deaf, whoever's doing the teaching here, okay? And also, cueing provides placeholders for sounds that the child doesn't know. So for example, if I'm cueing something, I know that the deaf child might know that a sound goes in a word, but maybe until they're taught the sound, they don't know how to pronounce that sound in the word. So but they have it as a placeholder in their mind. And when they learn the sound, it automatically goes into the word. So when I was living in Montgomery County, we had a doctoral student come and do a study. She did 120 students, 30 hearing, 30 total communication, 30 oral, and 30 cueing students. And what she found was that children who were profoundly deaf and used cued speech for a minimum of 3 years scored at the same level for reading as normal hearing children. They also carefully matched the oral and the oral and total communication students scored significantly lower. In fact, when I left Montgomery County in 1993, they looked at it and they realized that in the cueing program, 30 out of 32 students were fully mainstreamed and on grade level for literacy. They couldn't say the same for the oral and the total communication programs, and they began to look at whether or not all children should be exposed to cueing regardless of modality. So phonologic awareness is like very trendy now in terms of reading and literacy. So I just wanted to address that, that in hearing children, research shows that phonologic abilities are correlated with reading achievement, and that the link is causal between some phonologic tasks and reading. Cueing children, deaf children who have been cued to, have comparable phonologic awareness skills. Deaf cuers, as adults, they do not rely solely on interpretation. Why? They're excellent lip readers. Because they have to look at the mouth at the same time as they're looking at the hand cue, when those cues are taken away, they are excellent lip readers. My son gives an example of his ex-wife, who was a signer, and she had better speech than him because she was deaf, did not become deaf until elementary school. And so he would lip read the waiter at a restaurant, and she would sign to her what he wanted, and then she would tell the waiter, but she couldn't lip read at all. She could talk, but she couldn't lip read. It's a cute story. Anyway, deaf cuers, they learn English naturally. They learn foreign languages as easily as hearing children. When I was a transliterator, we did Latin, we did Spanish, we did French. My son learned Hebrew. My son had a bar mitzvah. Deaf cuers have an accurate phonologic model of the spoken language. That's that internal understanding. They have English skills that match their hearing peers. And because they have that internal understanding, when they're going to learn to read, it's the same as for hearing kids. They just get it because it's just another form of the same language. They have a huge vocabulary that they can access in general education programs, and they require fewer supports. So we know that cueing provides complete visual access to the phoneme base of language, that cuers know target sounds for words, and that they can learn to listen to the language they already know. Now, some people come and they say, well, what do you need cued speech for if a kid has a cochlear implant? Well, guess what? Cueing and cochlear implants are really, really powerful partners. Why are they powerful partners? Remember, we talked before about validating what you hear? All children improved in speech production and spoken syntax after they were implanted. The cueing group demonstrated more advanced syntax, language, and complexity in this particular study that's cited here. And there are presentations on how the cueing children do so well when they're implanted because they've had that background of cueing. So let's learn to cue together. Okay, we're going to take 5 minutes and I'm just going to teach you a couple of basic skills. The chart can be downloaded from the cuedspeech.org website. and you'll understand what I'm talking about. So first, a couple rules. Number one, you want your palm to face you. I'm trying to get fully in the screen here. You want your fingers to be together, your palm to face you. You don't want to cue out here. You want to be close to the mouth. You're going to place a consonant hand shape at the vowel placement, and realize that the placement for no vowel is at the side. There is the hand shape for no consonant. Okay, and synchronize your mouth to your cue. So you're going to cue what you say, but it has to synchronize. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to start with hand shape 5. We're going to put it at the throat. This is the throat, and we're going to move it to the side position. So now go back to the throat. That's ma. We're going to cue the word mat, ma, and then go to the side for the ta. So it's mat, mat. Okay, everybody got it? Mat. Okay, let's try something else. Now we're going to change that first phoneme to show rhyming words. So we have mat, and guess what? This is also the sound. Remember I said before, this is and ta. So now it's fat, tat, and it's also at. Right now, all of those cues were the same, but my mouth was different every single time. Let's do it again. Mat, fat, tat, at. So what was different? What was different was my mouth. Okay. So again, I'm showing you all of the consonant sounds here so that you can see them. But again, this chart, the full chart, can be downloaded from the cutespeech.org website. And again, these are the vowel sounds. Now let's go to a different hand shape. Let's go to this one. This is hand shape 3. So you want your thumb and forefinger together, and you want to have them facing you. Your palm is faced out, always out. And we're gonna cue hat. So what happens is we have to go from this position to this position, from 3 to 5. So watch. Hat. We always do a final consonant in the side position. So a is at the throat. Hat. Okay, let's try sat. Sat. Rat. Rat. Does everybody have that? I'm going to repeat it again. Hat. Sat. Rat. This is how deaf kids learn to rhyme. Okay, let's try a couple more. Just looking at my time. Okay, we're going to do, now, this is the pa sound. You're not seeing the chart, so I'm showing you. The hand shapes on the chart show you how to do it. So it's pat, pat, and dat. You go to hand shape 4, this one right here, and it's bat and nat. The G is silent. Okay, this hand shape is the ba, na, and hua sounds. So bat, nat. Now we'll go here to hand shape 2, this one, and you've got cat, that, that. Cat, that, that. And finally, this one here, chat, which is hand shape 8. Now hand shape 8 is this position, but when we're cueing, we have to make sure we normally if you're cueing, it's the longest extended finger. Now here, we're going to do the pointer finger because we don't want to obscure the mouth. So we're doing it at the throat, and it's chat, chat. It's really not that hard. You're putting two sounds together. And what's wonderful about this is you can show differences in words that are similar. So like psychology, psychological. Watch. Psychology, psychological. So if you had to spell that, it might not be as obvious if you were finger spelling that. But those are the kinds of nuances in language that you can show with cueing. So I'm gonna, let's do these phrases. Pat, Matt, Pat, sat, Matt, sat, that, Nat, sat. In 5 minutes, you're cueing sentences. How simple is that? Now I know I'm making it sound a little easier than it is. You have to memorize those vowels, but think of the typewriter. Think of your times tables. Once you learn them, you learn them. It's done. So I just wanted to talk about how you can learn to cue and what things are available for you. First of all, you can take a class through cuecollege.org. We have an online class. Go to cuecollege.org and shop. You could also get, if you are a parent of a newly identified child, you can sign up on cuedspeech.org for the Deaf Children's Literacy Project program, where you can access this course for free. You have to have a deaf child, obviously. Also, if you're really motivated after this presentation, these are some classes that are coming up. The top 3 classes are being offered by our Cued Speech, our New England Association. And there's a beginner class, a beginner intermediate class, and a skill building class. And the class on the bottom is a beginning class sponsored by the North Virginia Cued Speech Association. And these are Zoom classes, so you're not going in person, everything's online. I think Zoom has been a wonderful thing for cuers because we're connecting and we don't have to be in person. So maybe that one good thing did come out of this pandemic. And some resources for you. Please go to cuedspeech.org. You can sign up for our electronic newsletters. You can join. It's fairly reasonable to join. You can go to cuecollege.org and you can sign up and you can get materials. Dailycues.com has wonderful games and events and information. And also on cuedspeech.org, you can find your regional director. All of these are ways to get support. This is a wonderful book that I strongly, strongly recommend for people new to our community. It's called Cued Speech and Cued Language for Deaf and Hard of Hearing Children. Carol Lasasso, Kelly Lamar Crane, and Jacqueline Lebert wrote this book. It's a little more than a decade old, but it's a wonderful, wonderful book. And finally, please, go to cuedspeech.org, join a Facebook group, go to YouTube and look at videos about cued speech, listen to parent stories, and you will find out that there are wonderful things out there. And now what I'd like to do is I'd like to open this up for questions, okay? So with that, I'm gonna stop my screen sharing and Suhad will help us. How do I get out of this? There we go. Okay, let's stop screen sharing. Oops, screen sharing has stopped. Okay, so with that, I would love to take some questions. Did something happen? What happened?
We have a question in the chat. Is this presentation recorded? Is it going to be posted online? Yes, it is.
And we have more webinars coming up. We're going to be having them once a month.
The next webinar will be February 8th, and it's going to be Your Home is a Learning Laboratory. And it again is going to be Serena Rafay presenting. So hopefully you can join and spread the word.
I have a question. Maybe you already said this and I missed it. How long does it take a young child to learn cued speech, would you say?
So cueing is a receptive, it was designed to be receptive, okay? So expressive cueing comes with receptive use. So as a parent in the home, people around the child should be cueing to the child, and the child will understand it receptively. And I would say that it's fairly quick. I mean, it depends on the age of the child. For my own son, I will tell you, he was 3.5 when we started, and we started with his known vocabulary, and he had some signs. So what we did was we cued it, signed it, cued it. And then once he had all of his known vocabulary, I could see that it kind of clicked for him. And then very easily, we expanded our language. So I think the age of the child counts, but also the level of cueing in the home. My son did not learn to expressively cue by himself. He was taught to expressively cue when he was 6 or 7. His teachers felt that it was important for him to learn to expressively cue because no one understood his speech. His speech was very poor, and they felt that if he had to synchronize his hands with his mouth, that it would slow him down and they could better understand him. And it worked. He did become a good expressive cuer. I know many children that never expressively cue, but I know many children that do learn just because their parents are cueing to them. So I will tell you that we've just developed, that's available in the Cue Store, kits for children to learn to cue. So there are games that they can use, flashcards and different games that they can use to learn to cue. We put out 2 already, they're seasonally themed. So we did a fall kit, we did a winter kit. We're getting ready to put out a spring kit. And the idea is to give these kids games, colorful characters. We developed a whole new set of, you saw the faces that on the charts that I showed you were kind of boring. We created diversity in the faces, so that, you know, they were colorful and they're more child friendly. So those are available in the Cue Store, and those are ways that we can help encourage children to expressively cue. I hope that answers your question.
Serena, we have a question from Debbie North. Debbie, if you want to, put your camera on. And
Hi, Debbie.
Hi, I have a few questions, but I'm going to start out by saying it seems like cued speech is, and cued speech with the word speech in it, but it's mainly focused on spoken word, correct?
No, it's focused on understanding and internalizing the spoken language. We have many native cuers who don't use their voice, but
So,
they
yeah,
understand.
you mentioned it's only receptive, not expressive. I think you just mentioned that. That is only.
Well, what I said was it was developed to be receptive, but it is used expressively, yes, by many, many adult deaf cuers.
So like what Angela's doing, if I was a student and I was cueing back to her, she would voice what I was cueing?
Yes, she could do that.
And then you mentioned, because I know a lot of students You know, the focus is on rhyming words, and you were saying mat, fat, rat, hat. So I mean, I know in the hearing world, I think it's exciting, like, oh, the deaf student can rhyme, but it's not really focused on understanding what a rat is, what hat is, what a mat is. It's focused on what it sounds like when you say it.
No, you're using cueing in spoken discourse. So you're using it in conversation the same way that you would do for a hearing child. So the only difference is you're cueing everything you say. So when you cue everything you say, the deaf child receives the full extent of the spoken language, just like the hearing child would. So they're receiving the language the same way that hearing child is receiving it. Their understanding of the language is the same way a hearing child would understand it. Exactly the same. The only difference is you're cueing to that child. So if you want them to understand what a rat is, you know, how would you teach that to a hearing child? It's the same thing.
Right. And then one last thing, and this just is because of who I am. When you were saying this was developed because parents needed something easy to learn, that kind of makes me, I don't know, feels strange to me.
Well, think about it this way. More than 95%. I mean, this statistic's been around forever. I'm not telling you something you don't know, okay? These parents were not learning sign language, okay? They were not becoming fluent in sign language. These deaf children were being language deprived at home. Now we're talking 60s, 70s, 80s.
Right.
Language deprivation to the full extent, okay? If a parent has something they can learn, are you going to ask them to go to China, learn Chinese, and come back and say, okay, wait, kid, don't grow up while I go become fluent in another language? That's not happening. Parents need, everybody has a life. Parents needed something that they could learn in their own language to be able to communicate with their child. And the same language that the children are going to go to school to learn to read in. I think it was great. I learned to cue, and I have to tell you, my world opened. As a parent, my world completely opened. I can tell you, I used to go to bed guilty at night that I didn't talk to my child enough, that I wasn't signing enough, that I didn't have a good communication with him. And when I learned to cue, and I knew he understood, my world completely opened. And I felt freedom. I felt like I had escaped from jail. And my kid, the wheels were turning in his head. He couldn't get language fast enough. And because he got that language, by the time he was in 3rd grade, he was in the 99th percentile on his California Reading Achievement Tests. That language came because he had an internal understanding of the spoken language, because I was cueing every single thing I said. I became fluent. And with my freedom to speak to him, my knowledge that he understood everything I said, that's what made him, and many, many, many other deaf children out there that cue. I can point to hundreds of families just like mine, that once you learn to cue, it's just like your kid is hearing. I mean, obviously they're not hearing, they're deaf. They still need a lot of different things, but let's put it this way. The focus is not on the fact that he's a deaf child, but he's a child who happens to be deaf. Okay? And we're making some adjustments in our house to accommodate his special needs.
Okay.
Does that
It does. And I have 2 more questions. I just don't want to take everyone else's time if someone else has a question.
Sure.
But cued language translator, or what?
right? Transliterator.
Okay, transliterator. Is that a certified position? Is that
Yes.
a certification, I guess, should I mean?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And when adult adults, do they request cued language translators when they go to, so they can do
Yes.
things, they're out there to request for that too? And
Absolutely.
then one last thing, you mentioned SLPs and TODs using this. Do you feel like they should also be certified in it if they're using it?
I feel that I do feel and have felt, even when I was president of the NCSA, that they should get some kind of skills assessment. The NCSA offers several levels of cueing skills assessments, and we have recommended to school districts that teachers who are using it, that's a good way to assess their skills. We can't force schools to do that, but we offer it. It's available. The assessments are just that. They're assessments. They get back, an analysis. You cued this wrong. You were out too far with your hand shape, or maybe your thumb wasn't showing, or your hand was bent, or what, those kinds of things. So I think, that those are a good thing. But not all teachers of the deaf are going to be cueing fluently.
Right.
And SLPs in particular don't necessarily need to know it fluently. They need to know it enough to be able to teach target sounds and to be able to teach speech sounds, not to necessarily use it in flowing speech.
Okay.
Okay. So I think that different people need different things.
Agreed.
Okay.
Agree. And I feel like this is an option for parents, and I'm not against it at all. This is why I took tonight, because I wanted to learn more about it. How do you feel this is different from visual phonics?
So the difference is there's actually an article coming up in our next newsletter about that. Kathy Rasmussen is really an expert on this. The difference is that visual phonics was not developed to be used in running speech. So when I can cue at the same rate that I talk. Okay, visual phonics was not designed to do that. So if I can use it at the same rate that I speak, I can say anything. I can say supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. My deaf son not only knows what I've said, but how to pronounce it. Okay. He can tell the difference between if you came from Michigan or you came from South Carolina just by the way you cue, because you cue the way you talk. Okay. You say you all or y'all. You see what I'm saying? I hope that answers your question. Do we have more questions?
We have another question. It will have to be really quick because we need to.
We need to stop at 8:54. Yes.
This is from Rachel. I'm not sure how to say the last name, Wonas.
Yes.
What has your experience been in using this with children with language deprivation? I work in a deaf school and we use ASL as a primary mode of communication. Most of our students come from signing families, and pre-K is often their first exposure to language.
So we've seen cueing. I've seen it personally used with kids coming from other countries with no language, no hearing. And my experience is within 3 years, they can be at grade level. That's my experience. If they're cued to consistently, they can catch up. We've had kids come from India. We've had kids come from South America, Central America, kids who were on a farm and never saw school until they came to America at 10 or 11 years of age. I had a kid, one of my first transliterating jobs, a 5th grader who was 3 years behind in reading, caught up within a year. So it's about consistent exposure to cueing. And with that, I thank you. I will tell you, anybody who wants to ask me a question who couldn't get it in tonight, please email me at info@cuedspeech.org and I will answer your questions, or feel free to call 800-459-3529 and I will be happy to take your call. It goes right to my cell phone and I'm happy to talk to you. Have a great night.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you to our CLT and ASL interpreter. Good night, everybody.